Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into a major one, that high-stakes legal fight over the contract between NewJeans and their agency, Ador Asdarin.
Yeah, this involved Ador, the parent company, HYBE, Habe, and of course Newgene's themselves. It was all about whether their exclusive contract was still valid after, well, a very public breakdown of trust. Everyone was watching this one.
And we finally got the verdict. October 30th, 2025, the Seoul Central District Court ruled, and it was decisive.
Completely decisive, a total win for Ador. Every argument Newgene's made to try and terminate the contract, rejected. Plus, Newgene's has to cover all the legal costs.
Okay, but here's something you pointed out that's kind of unusual. Usually these civil rulings are pretty brief, right? Just the outcome.
Exactly. But this time, the court actually spent around 40 minutes reading out the reasoning behind the judgment. They went through all 10 of Newgene's main arguments and explained exactly why each one failed. That's not something you see every day.
40 minutes of detail. That definitely sends a message. So that's our mission for this deep dive. Unpack that reasoning. What specific evidence did the court rely on to say Ador did not breach any substantial obligations under the exclusive contract?
Right, because it really gets into the nitty-gritty of corporate dealings, private messages, all sorts of things. It wasn't just about the public statements.
So where do we start? What was the core issue the court tackled first?
It really boiled down to the role of the former CEO, Min Hee-jin, and this whole idea that she intended to separate the group from HYBE. That kind of set the stage.
Okay, let's jump into that. Argument 3 you mentioned was crucial, the part about the audit against Min Hee-jin and her dismissal. Newgene's claimed it was unjust.
Yeah, they argued the audit was basically unfair, a pretext, but the court completely disagreed. And this is where some, let's say, revealing evidence came out.
What kind of evidence?
Kakao Talk messages. Private chats between Min Hee-jin and the former Ador vice president, Lee Sang-woo. The court admitted these messages using something called the free evaluation of evidence principle.
Okay, hold on. Free evaluation of evidence. What does that mean for, someone listening? Why is that important here?
Pretty significant in Korean civil cases.
Yeah.
It basically means the judge gets to decide how much weight to give any piece of evidence, even informal stuff like private texts, based on whether they think it shows someone's real intent. It's less strict than, say, criminal court rules about evidence.
So those texts were seen as direct proof of what Min Hee-jin was planning.
That's exactly how the court saw it. They cited specific messages.
Right.
Like back in February the previous year, Lee apparently messaged something like, "Let's make things difficult for HYBE and gain our freedom." And Min replied, "That would be nice."
That would be nice, okay?
And then in March, another message from her said something along the lines of, "We're changing the plan and moving the timeline up. We'll go public and sue, depending on HYBE's response."
Wow. Okay, so that paints a very different picture than just being caught off guard by an audit. It sounds like active planning.
Precisely. The court concluded this was enough evidence to show she intended to take Ador and Newgene's out of HYBE. And because of that, Ador starting an audit wasn't unjust. It was seen as a legitimate move to protect the company's interests.
Right, a response to an internal plan they discovered. So once that intent was established, how did that affect the first argument, the one about her dismissal causing a management vacuum?
Well, it seriously weakened it. Newgene's argued, she was the creative core, so firing her automatically broke the contract. But the court looked strictly at the contract itself. And while they acknowledged the members trusted her a lot, the court said, look, her personally being CEO wasn't written down as a condition for the contract to be valid. Her dismissal in itself didn't automatically equal a management vacuum in the eyes of the contract.
The contract was with Ador, the company, not Min Hee-jin, the individual, essentially.
Exactly. Plus, the court pointed out that Ador actually offered her a new deal to continue producing, which she turned down. And she later resigned as an internal director voluntarily. So the narrative that Ador just cut her off wasn't quite accurate according to the court's findings. It made it hard to argue Ador unilaterally broke the trust.
Okay, that makes sense from a contractual standpoint. So if dismissing Min wasn't the fatal flaw, what about the argument that Ador just couldn't manage the group properly after she left? That brings us to management duties, arguments 2 and 10.
Right. Argument 2 was that Ador failed its management duties post-Min. The court looked at what Ador was actually doing during that time.
And what did they find? Did things grind to a halt?
Not entirely. The court noted there was a delay in hiring new producers, but they attributed that delay partly to Ador waiting to see if Min would cooperate with the transition. But crucially, other core management stuff kept going. Album production, concert planning, world tour prep, ads, those were still being handled by Ador.
So maybe a hiccup in one area, but not a total system failure?
Pretty much. And that connects to argument 10, the abandonment claim. This one got a lot of attention because of that internal report phrase. Abandon new, start anew. Sounds bad, right?
Yeah, taken alone, that sounds like clear intent to drop the group.
But the court stressed context. When they looked at the whole report, there was apparently nothing negative about New Jeans in it. And Minheechan herself, who was still CEO when that report was around, hadn't objected to it then.
So the court saw it as a phrase taken out of context, maybe selectively used.
That seems to be the conclusion. And they backed it up with the money argument. HYBE poured $21 billion out of way. One that's around $15 million US into New Jeans. The court basically said it's just not believable that HYBE would invest that much and then suddenly decide to abandon them for other groups. The financial commitment contradicted the abandonment idea.
Okay, the money trail speaks volumes there. Let's shift to the next big area, the one that probably generated the most online buzz. Claims about integrity, plagiarism, and reputation. We have to talk about ILES.2.
Yes. Argument 6, the OLIT plagiarism claim. This was huge in the media. The idea that HYBE launched a copycat group through a subsidiary.
Did the court buy the similarity argument as a breach of contract?
No, not really. They acknowledge, yes, there are some similarities between New Jeans and OLIT, but they decided it wasn't enough to be called replication. And here's the really interesting part for the K-pop industry.
What's that?
The court explicitly stated that general concepts for girl groups, things like aesthetics, overall vibe, style, these aren't protected as publicity rights or intellectual property under current law.
Whoa, hold on. So the court is saying you can't legally own a K-pop group's overall concept or aesthetic. That has huge implications, doesn't it?
It really does. It means unless there's specific copyright or trademark infringement, just having a similar style or mood isn't something you can sue over successfully, at least based on this ruling. So Adore not taking stronger action against OLIT wasn't seen as a failure of their duty.
Okay, that's a major clarification. What about argument 7, the ignored Hani incident? That felt very personal, alleging mistreatment.
Yeah, the claim was about verbal abuse or infringing on her personal rights. But the court dismantled this one pretty effectively using evidence.
What evidence?
They traced the rumor back to Min Hee-jin herself. Apparently, she had sent Hani a message asking, "Did all of OLIT ignore you?" Which suggested the whole thing might have started from her question.
Interesting. So it didn't originate independently. What else did they have?
CCTV footage. They actually reviewed security camera video, which showed elite members bowing to Hani, standard industry courtesy. Based on that visual evidence, the court said, nope, can't confirm any personal rights infringement here.
Wow. A multi-million-dollar lawsuit partially turning on CCTV footage of bowing. It really shows the level of detail they went into. Evidence trumped allegation.
Definitely. Okay, then there were the PR claims, arguments 4 and 5, about HYBE supposedly failing to protect New Jeans' image.
Argument 4 was about that dispatch video leak involving trainees, right? Did HYBE drop the ball?
The court said no. They found HYBE did take reasonable steps. They got the videos deleted or blurred, contacted the other subsidiary involved, Source Music, and even sent an official letter to dispatch. So the court felt HYBE had acted appropriately to manage the situation.
And argument 5, the claim that HYBE's PR team was bad-mouthing New Jeans' success.
That one fizzled too. It turned out a reporter had incorrectly stated that New Jeans' Japanese debut sold 1 million copies, which wasn't true at the time. HYBE PR correcting that number wasn't seen as undermining the group.
How did the court frame that?
As responsible management. They said correcting false sales figures is important to avoid misleading investors. So it was actually part of their duty, not an attack.
Okay, almost there. The last couple arguments, 8 and 9, were more about contractual points and internal politics.
Yeah, argument 8 was called the Dolphin Kidnappers Incident. It involved a video, the ETA director's cut, that New Jeans apparently posted without getting Adore's okay first.
And the issue was Adore asked for it to be taken down.
Right. The court said Adore was perfectly within its rights to ask for the deletion because the contract required prior consent for posting content. So Adore was just enforcing the contract terms, not breaching them.
Makes sense. And finally, argument 9, the album push-out claim. The idea that New Jeans releases were deliberately delayed or disadvantaged.
The court basically called this a political tactic. They looked for hard evidence that any scheduling decisions actually harmed New Jeans and didn't find enough. The conclusion was that this claim was likely used by Min Hee-jin as ammunition against HYBE during their conflict, rather than reflecting a real contractual violation by Adore.
So looking back across all 10 arguments, It seems like a consistent pattern emerged. Claims of neglect or bad faith from Ador kept running into evidence of due diligence, contractual rights, financial facts, and critically that initial finding about the intent to separate.
That's a perfect summary of the legal outcome. The court essentially said Ador didn't seriously mess up its contractual duties, and the whole collapse of trust argument wasn't proven to be Ador's fault in a way that would justify ending the contract. So, legally, no grounds for termination.
And the bottom line for you listening is that exclusive contract is still very much active. NewJeans remains legally bound to Ador and needs their approval for activities. HYBE, Habe, and Ador really solidified their legal position here.
It's about as complete a legal win as you can get. But here's the lingering question, the provocative thought perhaps. Despite this absolute legal victory for Ador and HYBE, NewJeans immediately said they plan to appeal. They put out a statement saying trust is impossible to restore under these circumstances.
Right. So the court says the contract stands, the relationship must continue legally, but the artists are saying the relationship is broken beyond repair.
Exactly. The legal framework is set, the court laid bare all these internal communications and intentions, but how does this actually work day to day? How do you manage a creative group when the trust is publicly declared dead, even if the contract says you have to? That's the complex reality moving forward, and maybe something only time or some unexpected compromise can really figure out.